Hey everybody, welcome to this week's podcast. Before I begin, I just want to say how excited I am to be presenting and having a booth at this weekend's Retro World Expo. I'm doing a panel with Destiny, FOMO, and Beast at 6 p.m. in panel room A. Plus, I'll be at the booth and kind of wandering around the whole time. And I am really looking forward to seeing people I haven't seen in 2 years. Now that I finally have a house, I want to hunt down and stalk the Shadow Box guys so I can finally buy a few of those. Can't wait to see my friends at Forgotten Heads, and there's a whole bunch of other people I'm really looking forward to meet, including a whole bunch of you, hopefully. So please try to find me if you go. I really want to meet as many of you as possible, and hopefully I will see you this Saturday and Sunday. But I'll stop rambling about that. Let me jump in and talk about what's been going on in the past week. A Kickstarter campaign has just been successfully funded for a music video album on the NES, and this is both music and video that are played on a cart and generated by the NES itself. It's not like a Raspberry Pi and a NES cart or something like that, which is still cool, but this is all generated by the NES. And the board itself has been designed by Brian from RetroUSB, the creator of the AVS and a whole bunch of other very awesome stuff. So this is one of those pretty cool things where if you're into music and you're into retro games, you might want to seriously consider this one. And the team behind it said that it is totally complete. The album's done, everything's made, and this Kickstarter campaign is just to fund the production of the carts and nothing else. So you're not paying for a bunch of people to then go wait and come up with a music album. It's all done. So this is one of the safer Kickstarters to go through. And of course, there's always things out of people's control that could happen, but generally speaking, when something's done and then a Kickstarter pops up, it's a much safer bet. So if you're into anything even remotely like this, check out the Kickstarter campaign, listen to the music samples, and see if it's something you'd want to pick up. But it certainly looks pretty promising. Billy Time Games has just recreated the Sega Channel experience on a ROM that you could play through emulation. And for anybody unaware, the Sega Channel might have been the world's first console game download service. Obviously for PCs, something like that could have existed earlier, but as far as I know, I don't know any other game console that had, up until that point at least, a service that allowed you to connect it to the internet and download games. And the way this worked was you'd have to have a Time Warner cable subscription, and you would screw just the standard cable jack right into a cartridge that plugged into your Genesis, and there was some exclusive content like the only official US version of Wily Wars up until that point, some other games that were already commercially available, and some extra menus and stuff like that. And it was one of those things where when you were a kid, everybody wanted to at least see what that was like and experience it. But if you didn't have the money to afford it, or if you didn't live in a place with Time Warner cable, you were completely out of luck. And Billy Time Games has been able to go back and recreate that experience on a ROM. And there are some bugs at the moment. Some of the ROMs load very quickly, so you wouldn't have seen any of the animations or stuff that you would have back in the day when it was downloading onto the cartridge. Also, I think there's a bit of trouble getting it working on real hardware at the moment, but hopefully that's something that could be fixed in a future update, so you could throw it on a ROM cart. And in my opinion, even if it was something like a Mega EverDrive Pro or a Mega SD, something with an FPGA-based thing, that would be cool too, just because this is such a unique and different experience. And while the Satellaview for Super Nintendo had something similar, that came after this. So I've never seen one in person. I've never even seen the Sega Channel cartridge in person. So this is definitely something I'd love to experience. And I'm really happy that Billy Time Games took the time to do all this, because it's something that could very easily have been lost forever with only just screenshots and magazine articles preserving it. And now, if you want to, you can go back and go through a menu and play it kind of the same way you would have back then, just much faster. So if you're interested, definitely check it out, because stuff like this is always really impressive, and I'm just really appreciative that people would go through the trouble to do it. I recently had the pleasure of doing a live stream with all 3 members of PixelFX to talk about their N64 digital HDMI mod. And if you wanted all the details you could imagine about this mod, whether you might be somebody that already owns it and just hasn't had time to go through all the settings, or maybe you're on the fence about buying it, or you're just curious about it, this is definitely the video to watch, because we went through every single setting and you got to hear directly from the developers about what the setting does, why it's there, how to use it, etc. So this is really the best deep dive I could have possibly done, and doing it without the creators just wouldn't have been the same. So if you have a lot of interest in this, definitely check out the video. I do want to apologize to the team. We were running a little bit late, so I kind of just jumped right into the settings without doing a proper intro. Luckily, all 3 members are friends of mine, so I highly doubt they were offended, but I did want to publicly apologize at least. But it did kind of work out, because it ended up that we were, all business, but we mulleted it. We were business in the front and then casual at the back, and that's exactly what happened. We went through all the settings, and then at the end, we kind of took questions from the chat and just had a much more casual conversation about the mods, the company, how they're going to be, going forward with this thing. So if you're an N64 fan and you were interested in HDMI mods, or if you're just a fan of the members of PixelFX, definitely give this one a watch, because I don't think you'll be disappointed. And speaking of the N64, I just released a video that's a getting started style video that is meant to introduce people to how to play N64 games in 2021, in modern times. And of course, you could always just grab older equipment like a CRT and a composite video cable like you might have back in the day, but there's a lot of things that have changed going into flat panels. There's a bunch of accessories you might have forgotten about, new ones that just came out that you might want to use. So I wanted to put together a video that is something that experts might still enjoy, because there's a few kind of neat tidbits in there, or beginners especially could step into this and understand what and how to do anything they need to do to get their N64 working, or how to buy one, and even alternatives, because I do think stuff like the Switch Online service is totally fine for people that are just like, I played those as a kid, maybe I like them, maybe I don't, let me just pay the money and play it on the Switch. I'll talk a little bit more about that later, but for casual gamers, I think it absolutely serves its purpose, and I kind of wanted to sum all of that up into one video. And the other thing that I wanted to do is take the script of the video and turn that into a typical web page write-up like I would have before I started doing YouTube videos. And I love doing that. The problem is, it's like an extra 5 hours of work on top of everything else that I already did, and not nearly as many people will see these in the short term, because it's the same thing, right? As much as I don't want to be a YouTuber, a Twitter person, an Instagram model, whatever, but I want to do RetroRGB, and I want to use all of these platforms to promote it, but without getting things caught in the algorithm, none of that other stuff could happen. So I kind of went back and did this in the same style I would have back in the day when I first started RetroRGB. But some of the cool things that I was, I kind of always suspected, but I was definitely proving out when doing this, is that a lot of stuff in a written article comes out the same as a video. There's, of course, the advantage of, if I make a mistake, I could spend 30 seconds fixing it, as opposed to, reshooting, re-editing, re-rendering, re-uploading. It's way easier to do stuff like that. But some of the comparisons I was looking at came out much better as a video, and others came out better as a still picture. And I think a great example would be the composite S-video and RGB comparison that I did using Mario Tennis in the character select screen, because in the still picture you could definitely see the sharpness and color difference, but what you don't see is all of the interference that composite video brings with it. So, for some context, if you were playing on a CRT, you might not care at all, you might not see a difference, but if you're going through a scaler on a flat panel, you see things like around the character select up top, around those circles, you could see a bunch of interference on composite that you wouldn't see on S-video. So while the picture is good, seeing it in the video definitely did it justice to have a true feel of what it's like to play that console via different methods on a flat panel. But on the other side of things, I also took some of the comparison pictures and things like the smoothing filter, and I thought that seeing the still picture really was a better experience, because I was able to stop, zoom in, and really just kind of go between the different ones and be able to compare them as my eyes wanted to, not as the pace of the video determined I should. And it was pretty cool. It was really neat to be able to see the different types of things paused like that. And it's good to see it in the video too, but this one I definitely preferred as a still picture, or maybe as both, because maybe you wouldn't get the full sense without it. But the point is, if time allows, I would really, really like to continue to do both at the same time. And on a selfish note, this is also one of the coolest CRT examples I've done ever, I think, in that I took the flat panel and put it next to a CRT and showed smoothing off and then smoothing on, and the CRT was composite video going into a consumer grade CRT, and seeing that really showed, at least in my opinion, did a much better job of showing the difference of what exactly you're going for when I talk about getting a CRT look. That doesn't necessarily mean scan lines. That certainly doesn't mean bad geometry and warped edges. But I think that was a great demonstration, and I think both the picture and the video were good enough. So if you haven't had time to see the video yet, or if you're not even a fan of the N64, you could still kind of take a look and see how sometimes composite blending is the right choice. Mimicking that on a flat panel via smoothing is the right choice, especially for early 3D graphics. So overall, if you're a fan of the N64 or you know somebody that is, I think that they would really enjoy this one, and I'm going to try my very best to stick to this format going forward. It's just an insane amount of work to be able to do both and to try to get into the same detail. But if it gets enough views, I'll try to keep doing this with each console and just doing a basic getting started for each in the same vein. You know, what accessories do you need to get started? What are the bumps in the road? What things do I think people would benefit from? What's the cheapest way to jump right in? All that stuff. So, you know, as always, if you like it, please share it. And if it gets enough hits, I'll keep doing it. If not, respectfully, I can't, because these are way too much work to just do casually on top of it, all the other stuff I do that, you know, I like all of it, but it just kind of comes down to if it's so much work and doesn't get that many views, then I got to move on to something else. But I certainly enjoyed it, so hopefully you did too. And, you know, if you are able to share it, thank you very much. So here's some very good and surprising news. Mike Chi has just posted the 5th round of RetroTink5x scalers, and they're still in stock, at least at the time that I'm recording this. And no, I'm not recording this 4 minutes after they went up for sale. In fact, I didn't even post this on the website till about a day afterwards, because, to be honest, I was pretty busy with the N64 stuff and forgot to. But even by the time I posted this, they were still stock, and Mike thinks there's enough to go around this time. So if you were on the fence about buying one, or if you were waiting for one, maybe now's the time. But if you need any info, this post that I just put together here should have everything you need. It has my original deep dive video. It's got links to the firmware updates that show you the scan lines and the smoothing and all the other stuff that you might want to be interested in. It's got the purchase link, the firmware update links, drivers, everything else. You know, I basically put everything that you would need to know to learn about the RetroTink5x and to get all the info that you would want all in one post. So if it's a device that you think you would benefit from and that you were looking forward to buying, now's probably the time. If not, hey, maybe you're still interested in it and maybe you missed something from the previous updates, but it's all right there in that one post if you're interested. And I gotta just absolutely give a shout out to Mike for pulling off 5 rounds of orders during a part shortage and having one order that's large enough to be able to last days now so far. So that's a pretty big accomplishment in today's climate. So, awesome work, Mike. Thank you very much. And if you're interested, everything's right there in the post. I recently posted a conversation-style podcast with Clint Cronin, who is a jiu-jitsu black belt, an instructor, a cornerman and coach for MMA, as well as an IT guy and a fellow retro gaming nerd. And getting to know him a little bit through just the comments on social media over the past year or so, I really thought he would make a great podcast, and it absolutely was a blast talking with him. He has a very storied history covering a lot of different stuff, and it was one of those conversations that felt like a half hour had gone by, and I looked down and realized a lot more time had passed. So hopefully if you're listening to it, you'll kind of feel the same flow as well, because it was just, it was kind of fun. The first half of it was when we first started recording, we got right into retro gaming stuff, and then we had an interruption and had to continue the next day, and then we kind of jumped right into the martial arts jiu-jitsu stuff after that, and circled back around afterwards. So I really enjoyed the very wide variety of stuff we talked about, and I always love doing stuff like this. I'm lucky enough to have met so many really awesome people over the years, and unfortunately I've had a ton of conversations that I genuinely think all of you would have wanted to listen to, and I haven't recorded them. So I definitely want to start doing a lot more of these. Hopefully I could pull one off every Monday. I know time is kind of crazy for me, but I really enjoy doing these, and I've read a lot of comments from people that enjoy listening as well. And kind of another couple of funny things about this is whenever I used to post podcasts, it would be that YouTube feel of, oh no, the views aren't spiking right away. And I've noticed a pattern that makes me really happy, to be honest with you, and that it seems that people who are interested in this stuff will go, oh, hey, that's a guest that I think I might be interested in. Oh, it's kind of long, though. Let me put that on my playlist and get to it on my commute when I'm, working on a project and want something to listen to. And so instead of having something like a big fancy video where everybody watches it the first week, it's the opposite. It's something that, gets the views and listens slowly as time goes by, because people are just saving it for when they have, when they have time for it, basically. And that really made me happy, because for a while there I was like, does this mean people aren't, the slow climb in views mean that people aren't enjoying these as much as the other stuff? But it doesn't seem to be that way at all. It just seems to be that other people consume that stuff the same way that I do, and that I listen to all of those types of things as audio only, as I'm walking, driving, shooting B-roll for a video. I always have stuff going on in the background. And in fact, anytime I've sent friends B-roll clips to use in their video, I'm sure they're always like, what the heck is on in the background? Are they talking about aliens or something? And it's the same thing. Just, I kind of treat it the way that other people seem to be. So I want to remind everybody that thank you so much for listening, and however you like to listen to these, do it. It's always nice to see YouTube views, and I always like to show my guests that they're getting views, but what's more important is if you're enjoying it, and enjoying it the way that you want to. And I've been trying to follow the numbers, which the audio podcast numbers aren't as accurate as the video views, but all of the audio podcasts all of the, the long form podcasts are getting more listens on audio only services than video, which is totally fine by me. However you want to do it, do it. So, other than that, just if you want to listen to an interesting conversation, definitely give it a chance. And on a personal note, I will say that while the world has finally started to realize that anybody could be a nerd, it is kind of fun doing an interview with somebody that doesn't at all look like a nerd, because there is still that stigma of like gamers and programmers either being skinny tweakers chugging energy drinks, or fat guys with neck beards just drinking beer. Next up, it looks like Marshall has quietly released a new firmware for the UltraHDMI. I didn't see anybody post about it. I didn't see anybody talking about it. And then a few weeks ago, somebody messaged me to say that they kind of stumbled across it. So I went through, and it looks like this new firmware has added a zero lag option. So to be clear, the UltraHDMI is not a laggy device. It's not like those pound cables or the SCART to HDMI converters. It is by no means something that adds a lot of lag. However, Marshall did add a new mode that, if your TV or monitor is compatible, brings it down to near zero. So it's one of these things where, I always am of the mindset that if your TV is compatible, put it in the lowest lag mode just so you never have to think about it again. But at the same time, if you put it in that mode and your TV doesn't work with it, in this case, don't worry. It's not something that's going to add a ton of lag. You're not going to suddenly not be able to play Smash anymore because you're using an UltraHDMI. It's a very low latency device anyway. But, anytime you could just save some kind of latency, why not, right? So if you have one of these and you have a ROM cart, it's super easy to update. You just drop the ROM, run it as if you were launching a game. It takes forever to update, but you don't have to do anything. You press a button, you walk away, you come back later, and it's all set. If you don't have a ROM cart, then it would get a little trickier. And the easiest thing to do by far would probably be to borrow one, to be honest. It would be much easier than disassembling and trying to, to flash it with a JTAG or something like that. And to be honest, I'm not sure I've never flashed one with a JTAG. It has the port on it, I think, but anyway, so if you have an UltraHDMI, it seems like a no-brainer. If you have an UltraHDMI and a ROM cart, it seems like a no-brainer. Just give it a try, see what you got. And also, there's a few other little things that Marshall added. I put all of it in the post right here. So, the other thing that I just want to make another quick point about, which I also talked about in the N64 video, if you own an UltraHDMI, you have an awesome mod for your N64. I do honestly think that the N64 digital is a pretty large step up because of the smoothing and because of the scanline options. But if you're somebody that doesn't need either of those and you already own an UltraHDMI, you won't need to upgrade at all. No disrespect to PixelFX, I'm just being honest. if you're on the fence about which to buy, I would obviously get the one that's, the team is working really hard to get stock, even in a part shortage, and they're constantly posting updates. That's kind of the obvious choice if you're looking to buy one now. But a lot of people have asked, why would I upgrade from my Ultra HDMI? And in all honesty, if you don't need the smoothing and you don't want extra scanline filters, or you're just willing to wait for upcoming scalers that have HDMI inputs that could add all that, then by all means, keep what you have and know that it's a great device. I guess the best way to say it is I always try to make sure that when new things come out, I remind people that the awesome stuff they bought a few years ago isn't any less awesome just because something else cool comes out. So, I just want to put everybody who owns an Ultra HDMI's mind at ease. You have a very cool thing that works great, especially now there's another firmware that adds a few extra features. So, enjoy the device unless you really want the smoothing and the new scan lines. But, respectfully to everybody involved, if you don't own anything like that yet and you're looking to get one, at least at the moment, the N64 Digital seems to be the one to get. Before I go, I just wanted to talk very quickly about the new Switch Online controllers and the N64 emulation. I don't have enough data yet to make a post on it or anything like that, but a lot of people were asking and we were tweeting about it yesterday, so I figured I would just talk about it here. I was able to test with Destiny a N64 Switch Online Bluetooth controller, and of course it worked totally fine with the Switch Online N64 games, but she also found that it was working with a bunch of just regular Switch games. There were some issues where the buttons didn't always map properly. There was one case in which one button wasn't available, so she wasn't able to pick things up in one game, but I found that really interesting because when the original Switch Online controllers were released, the Super Nintendo one and the NES one, I think I got both, but I definitely remember testing the SNES one, and it would not work on launch day with Switch games. Now, there's been a million firmware updates, maybe just the games I chose wouldn't work with them, but it was very notable that games that I would have thought would have been a perfect matchup for it, like Axiom Verge, wouldn't work at all. So, that's something that I thought a lot of people would want to know, that if you get a Switch Online controller, or if you have an older one, maybe make sure that your Switch is updated and give it a try again. Now, this was, a year plus ago that the SNES one came out, so I could have missed something. I'm human, I make mistakes all the time. Maybe I needed to use the Switch Joy-Cons as player 2 to launch the game and use the home button, and then I could have used the SNES, but overall it didn't work right. I couldn't get it to work at all, no matter what I tried at the time. I might have missed something, but it doesn't seem to be the case with this one. I have the 3-button Genesis one sitting right next to me, and other than opening it up and just kind of holding on to it, I haven't had time to do any other testing. So, like I said, this isn't a detailed thing. I just wanted to give a very quick update in that it does work for other games, but you're going to have to try it to see if the buttons map. And if you like using it with other games, maybe tweet at Nintendo or, tag them in all social media and let them know, like, hey, I'm trying to use a Nintendo controller with a Nintendo-made game and it's not working right. We want this feature. If you want it, let them know. The only other thing I want to add is I've seen and appreciated a lot of analysis of the N64 emulation. But I think a lot of people forgot the other side of it, in that if you grew up with N64, but you're mostly a modern gamer, or somebody grew up with it, or you're hearing about it now, and you just want to kind of try what the games are like casually, I think it's a great way to give them a try. They looked gorgeous at a glance. I didn't do a technical analysis. I'm sure if I sat and, I watched a few of the Modern Vintage Gamer videos, I'm sure if I were looking for any of the things that were wrong with it, it would drive me crazy, especially because I think they're a bit laggy too. But just as a, hey, let's play this. It's easier than messing with emulation. I don't have time to mess with emulation. I'm going to get Switch Online anyway to do the Animal Crossing thing. There's a lot of situations in which it's kind of a neat thing to try. I don't think personally I would spend the money on it just with the goal of playing N64 games, but that one's going to be completely up to you. But with all the negativity, which is deserved and accurate, I did want to add the other side of things, because I'm usually on the finger waving, it's too laggy side. So for once, I just wanted to be be waving the flag on the other side saying, if you just want a basic casual experience, it seems kind of neat. But yeah, if you're really into pro gaming, if you're a competitive Smash player, don't waste your time with it at all. But who knows, maybe if we keep complaining, and maybe if we keep telling Nintendo, you've done better before, why can't you do better now? Like MVG's last video articulated really well. Maybe they'll listen. You never know. Weirder things have happened. Well, that's it for this week. As always, thanks to everybody who watches, listens, plays nicely in the comments, and especially thank you to everybody that supports in any way, because it is your support who is keeping the podcast, the articles, the website, and everything else alive. So thank you all so much, and I hope to see as many of you as possible this weekend at the Retro World Expo. So thanks very much, and if I don't see you this weekend, I'll see you next week.